being purchased by African American, being purchased from our printer here in Baltimore City. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for inviting all of us to be here with you tonight. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, LY. Thank you, the committee. We appreciate your being here. Let me get right to Baltimore's matter, the problem. It is the overwhelming impoverishment of the black community in Baltimore. The overwhelming impoverishment of the black community and the direct intentional segregation of black people and black communities in the city of Baltimore. Don't look at me like it ain't so. It is absolutely what is driving this city. The people who lead it, the people who influence it. You know, I was on North and Pennsylvania Avenue the night after. And I was walking through with a CNN reporter. And she turned around and she looked at blocks and blocks of vacant and boarded up properties. And she said to me, Councilman, that riot really tore this neighborhood up, didn't it? And I said, turn around, Ashley. Do those boards look like they were put up yesterday? I said, this is years and decades of neglect of black leadership and white leadership. It is white leadership neglecting and black leaders who are paid for by white money, who have destroyed our neighborhoods, who have taken them down. 44% of black children in Baltimore live in poverty. 44%, it's really higher. That's the number they will report. That means their families are living in poverty, not just the kids. Not just the kids. 89% of our fourth graders don't read at grade level, don't do math at grade level. And someone yesterday was fussing about the state not giving money to the education of Baltimore City. Baltimore City gives 11% of its budget to education, 11%. Every other jurisdiction in the state of Maryland gives 50% or better to the education of their children. We give 11%. We give $200 million to our kids. We give $500 million to the police. And you see what goes on in our city around the police. The next time I come up, I'm going to talk about solutions. But tonight, I'm talking about the real issue in this country. And so the city can't always cry that someone else is holding us back, is not letting us do what we want to do. When we started this circulator, really, we decided, the city decided, to take it from the state and to run a bus for Inner Harbor, Baltimore. For Inner Harbor, Baltimore. And that circulator, which now runs a $10 million deficit, and will continue to run a deficit, has been allowed to expand even greater into neighborhoods that run along the harbor and just north of the harbor. It has been allowed to expand. And yet, as I said last week in another forum, pardon me, there is no freaking bus, free bus, that runs from East North Avenue to West North Avenue, that takes folk down Bentlow or up Fremont. There is no bus for people who are trying to get to work because they need to get to work, or to take them to the babysitters, or to take them to their doctor's appointment. And so we, the city, must take ownership of the routes and the transportation system in the city of Baltimore. And we should set up the system that works for the citizens of Baltimore. Now, the Red Line was a failure of leadership in our town, who said, you're a Republican, we don't like you, we're Democrats, we're not going to play with you, we're not going to work with you, we're not going to get along with you. We allowed that nonsense to not give us an alternative, because we said it's all or nothing. There's certainly more alternatives to what we saw on the Red Line that would allow us to have a good transportation system from east to west. When the city was destroyed, folk came from all around the region to rebuild the city. And Nehemiah said, get the heck out of our city. This is our city. We're going to rebuild it. You can't touch this city. The people who live here will rebuild the city. And so here in Baltimore, here's what happens. what little building happens comes from folk from outside of the neighborhoods, from away from where we are. We give tens of millions of dollars to developers, and we don't ask them to do anything but not pay taxes. Right. Not pay taxes. They don't try to build anything. And by the way, if you go by these huge tax-free properties, you're going to see automobiles and trucks coming in. And you look at the license plates, they're from Delaware and Virginia, and West Virginia, and Pennsylvania, but they're not from Baltimore. And you go 3 or 4 blocks away, and there are dozens of men and women standing on corners with no jobs and nothing to earn a living by. And yet in our communities stands abandoned and crumpled and forsaken properties. And what a natural matchup to bring these folk together with our trade unions and others to help teach them the skills that they will have for life, to rebuild their communities and with that sense of pride, be the first person to buy the homes that they themselves built. And it's not just housing to make a good neighborhood. Let me go back to what I said at the beginning. Wealth in the neighborhood. We don't own anything much in our own neighborhoods. And so we have to make sure that there's an opportunity and there's funding to support local ownership of businesses and services in our own communities. I want to go backwards to come forwards because sorry, is this on? Okay, now it is. Okay. So I want to go backwards to go forward. Because about 15 years ago, I stood on a stage like this. And I was asked, what are we going to do about the homicide and the violence in Baltimore City? And I said, let's get the city working. Let's get people jobs that pay a sustainable wage. Let's educate our children. Let's open up the centers again. Let's get folks, kids to be involved in after-school projects, in arts and culture, and to be arena players. And the guy standing next to me said, let's lock up as many black young men as we can. And guess what? We voted for the guy who said lock up as many black young people as we can. And so for 4 years, we locked up over 100,000 young black men every year, not cumulative. Every year we did that. So guess what? I'm coming back 15 years later and be just as stupid as I was 15 years ago. Because I say, put our money into our children. Put our money into our families and our young people, and don't have folk desperate. Desperate for an education, desperate for an opportunity, desperate to pay the rent. Policing is not the answer to what's going on in our communities. It is the lack of opportunity that's out there. It's the lack of education and jobs and the ability to own your own home. It's going to take a mayor to redirect the budget, to take the money from this place, $472+ million for police, and put it to education and the children. We'll commit to a minimum of $250,000 per year for the 4 years to arena players, blacks and blacks, UB Play, and to other cultural institutions in the city of Baltimore.